I, James, founded and work for HPI, but do not represent them or any of their opinions.
Welcome to Season 8, Episode 315 of the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast. Today is November the 28th, 2017. Every week, we definitively answer one question about the future of tech. To do that, we take into account many factors, including the companies involved, the people working for them, their marketing campaigns, and of course, the technology they're developing. I'm Matthew Dean Furlo, and watching Hallmark Christmas movies is my brother, James Furlo.
So I actually have a problem with that. I went on to Netflix today. So in our household, Christmas does not exist until Black Friday.
Right, yeah. Fair enough.
So I was like, finally, went on to Netflix today and was like, give me some new Hallmark movies. I'm super excited. Like, let's do this. There's one that I haven't seen, and it's the Christmas Prince, which is a Netflix original, which we're probably going to watch tonight because I can't help myself. But I've seen all the others.
I am so sad that you haven't seen the Christmas Prince yet, because my girlfriend couldn't help herself, and we got halfway through it before the sweet relief that was this podcast kicked in, and I got a graceful exit.
You're welcome.
Hate those movies so much. Oh my gosh, they're like their own art form too.
Yeah,
and Netflix is so smart because they like figured out what their genius is at figuring out what the formula is and then replicating it with their own like IP. And it's just like the canned music where they're like, and we were joking about the fact that music might be specifically written to sound canned. That's the amazing part about these shows. Like they've like, I'm sure it wasn't just like a bunch of really good writers who got drunk and decided to have some fun. I'll bet it's a bunch of really good writers who worked really hard to make it sound that bad.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny too. Like I even started watching the trailer and I watched the trailer, but I got maybe 20 seconds in and saw the, she's like a reporter and she has to cover some prince in some random place. And I went, okay, I can turn off the trailer. I already know exactly what happens with this movie.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I don't know the exact twist at the end, but like, they fall in love, like, duh.
You want to know something really frustrating? So we're also watching with our cousin Timmy, my roommate, and he called the twist within the first.
Oh, man.
He saw it, and he was just like, that's the twist. I was like,
that's
oh, my
awesome.
gosh, that's going to be it. Yeah, it's...
So now, like, there were certain shows, like How I Met Your Mother, I always saw the twist, but it was so fantastic that I loved to see how it came through. So
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's only like one of three options. They lied about who they were, and somehow that comes out. There's the disapproval of the rest of everybody and the insecurity of the one interest of dealing with that. And then there's like one other one. And I'm like, and that's like, that's how it works. And somewhere like, what is it? Like 10 minutes before the end or somewhere in there, someone does something stupid that you're like, oh, why did you do that?
Somebody does one thing that's stupid.
All right. But they do something where like they break up and then somehow either someone gives really good advice or someone comes around to it and,
one of the quirky side characters who's just like, was always really stern and mean, all of a sudden becomes their best. Yeah, I get it. I know. Yeah. It's just,
it's great.
No,
okay. Here's a better thing. Go ahead. What do you really want to know?
I want to know what the twist of this show is.
Here's the twist. I got a new smart home device today.
What?
I know. It finally came in the mail. I ordered this sucker like 6 months ago. It's my smart shades.
Whoa.
So I can automate my blinds.
Kind of jealous.
Oh, dude, it's great. It's solar powered because they're in a window. So like, why not? Let's make them solar powered.
Makes sense.
So you have to get a beaded, like corded, like roller blind. Like that's a requirement, which I only ordered yesterday. So I can't actually install them for a couple weeks while Home Depot makes them.
You can install them. You just
can't use them.
They just make that noise.
And what's super cool is they got this another little connector thing to hook up to my Wi-Fi network because I need one more of those. It's going to be HomeKit and Alexa compatible.
That is important. I'm jealous. I'm jealous, man.
Oh, it's great. The smart home is so the wave of the future. I'm gonna set it so it'll open and close for sunrise, sunset, which will drive my wife crazy, but I don't care.
So let's speaking of automation, James, we're gonna run out of time for this.
Oh yeah,
Real talk. What are we talking about? What's our
yeah.
question?
So we're gonna use the news of Tesla as a jump off point. So I think it was last week. Elon Musk jumped out of a moving semi truck. No, that's not true. It was parked. But
Okay.
which I thought it was funny. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, he drove the semi." I'm like, "No, he didn't. There was clearly someone else inside the cab." But whatever. Uh, they did their own little 40-minute keynote thingamajigger where they brought out their semi trucks, which he dropped hints at left and right, including posters of the silhouette of the truck. So
Yeah,
like,
for months.
you knew. Well, they had it scheduled last month, and then something happened where they decided this isn't the right time, so they bumped it back a month.
Yeah, they realized they
Some
were
sort of disaster or
bleeding
something.
money, and they had the
I know what it
Model
was.
3 and
Yeah.
wasn't shipping.
We gotta let people go, you know.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so they announced new trucks, and he didn't talk a whole lot about autonomy because he was kind of like, it's gonna have our autonomy package included, and but they looked Tesla slick and awesome, and it got us thinking, like, all right, let's talk about the future of semis and where are we headed with that? What's the current state? Are they even needed? And um, you know, do we actually think it'll be successful and things like that?
Yeah, I like it.
That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, man.
So I don't know how much you caught of it, but what they are is they're kind of race car esque on the inside in the sense that it's a single bucket seat, like right in the middle.
Yeah.
None of this over on the left hand side, which means you're not going to be driving around with your family. Which, okay, here's what it is. There aren't side mirrors. Instead, there are side cameras.
Oh man.
And what you have in the cockpit area are two large monitors on either side, which like half the monitor is the mirror, and the other half are, status indicators, blah, blah, blah. They're, surprise, surprise, electric.
Yeah.
And according to their internal stats,
not the screen, the truck, right? The truck.
Truck.
Okay.
The screens are also electric,
presumably.
The truck is, yes.
All right.
Yes. Well, no, the screens work on diesel, right. And they just flip the model on their head. Yeah. So it's electric. So it's super quiet and super efficient. He talked about a couple things. Like, it's funny. Like he is into performance metrics, I guess, which I'm kind of like, do I care? But I mean, I don't. That's not who I am. But they were talking about how fast it can go from 0 to 60, either all by itself or with a load, and it looks impressive relative to a normal diesel truck. You just press the pedal and go.
Right. Right, which is huge. I come back to this for a very long time in the heavy equipment industry. It has been a common thing for really heavy equipment to have diesel generators on board.
Yeah, like trains.
That power electric motors. Well, not just trains, but like if you go to the dump and you see those giant tractors, those all have electric motors to each wheel. So you get their independent electrical control and everything because their torque is so great. But they don't have batteries on board. They've got just diesel generators. And earth movers are the same way. But it's the only way to get the sort of power and control that they need. So I'm really, to me, it's more of a shock that it took this long to get an electric drag chain than the fact that there is one. Because for super heavy loads, that's been decided the best way to go for a long time.
And so, speaking of these super heavy loads, on fully weighted down, traveling at highway speeds, I think, hopefully I got this right, I think you can go 400 miles.
No, it's 500. Well,
yeah,
so they have three different models. They've got the $150,000 model, which will go 300 miles on a charge. The $180,000 will go 500, and then they've got the $200,000 founder edition, or nobody even knows what it comes with, but it'll be nice. it'll have $20,000 worth of extra cool stuff on it, like Elon Musk's signature, probably.
That'd be cool. That'd be worth at least $1. So So it actually goes, because they've done their research and they found that 80% of the trips go 250 miles or less. And so they're like, so we're not going to go for the super long hauls. We're going to get those short to medium range ones.
Right, which
And
I actually read somebody talk about. I was reading an article and they were talking about how, like, this is not going to take over the entire market, because 500 miles isn't enough. And you're like, yeah, but even in the article you talk about how companies like Walmart, most of the trucking that Walmart does is from regional distribution centers
yeah,
to their major Walmarts, which are all round trips of less than 500 miles. Like, and
boom.
and it's through a bunch of like low speed like city driving, which is where gas powered is the most inefficient, and the
Yeah.
electric motors do all the recuperative braking, and that's where you get the best boosts. So yeah, that's what they were targeting.
Yeah. Yeah. They're okay with not taking on the long haul truckers because they'll have their BFR for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
um,
So pretty interesting what they announced. They look cool. I mean, I've always thought Tesla vehicles look awesome.
yeah, they're pretty good at it.
And these ones don't disappoint. Just as a side note, because I think I actually want to take this into a broader thing. They also did a one more thing type of thing where they released their Roadster,
Yeah.
and people were flipping out over those, because we're mostly consumers, not semi truck drivers.
Yeah.
But that's okay. So what I want to do though is I actually want to talk a little bit about the current state, and if like something like this is even needed, and how well it will do. But before I do that, Matthew, who's this episode brought to us by?
Well, James, since it is we recorded this on Black Friday, and Christmas spirit is upon us, this episode is brought to you by eggnog.
Eggnog. I love
It's
eggnog.
it's a storage tradition. It's pretty good. If somebody asks you, "Do you like your eggnog with or without alcohol?" Explain to them that they've never had real eggnog if they're asking that question, because real homemade eggnog, you can't make it without whiskey. Because otherwise, it's just Jello. You gotta cut through with the brandy. Has been my experience, but yeah.
Gotcha. I am training to run a marathon, and so I'm trying to kind of watch what I consume. So we got the light and trim eggnog from the store,
Good.
and I mix it 50-50 with almond milk. It's not as good as the other one. But I don't feel as guilty. It means I can have 4 times as much, so it's all good.
That's would you want me to make some of my now somewhat world famous brew for when you
Dude, I'm in. I'm in.
Right. Cool. I'll make some. It's pretty good. I used to think, it's funny. I used to think it was like Coca-Cola, where you had to buy it in a grocery store. You didn't like make it. I had no idea that not only could you make it, but that's like the normal way. Like that's it's a cocktail that you could like order somewhere. I had no idea. Yeah. Anyways, good stuff. All right.
Speaking of no idea, I had no idea that the first big step in automation has already happened in the trucking industry.
What is it?
So it's these things called ELDs, electronic logging devices.
Okay.
And so it's this interesting thing where when you are a professional truck driver and you go on a trip, you have to keep a log of, here's when I started, here's how far I drove, here's when I stopped. And really that's to keep truckers accountable, because they're only allowed to drive a certain number of hours. Well, as you can imagine, those don't always get totally filled out correctly and honestly.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that has been invented are these ELDs. Essentially, it's like an automatic, or it goes into the like one of those ODBC2 devices. Is that right? Yeah, that goes into your car that automatically via GPS and other stuff tracks when you turn on your vehicle, when you start moving, where you're going, how fast you're going, your braking, all that kind of stuff. It tracks all of it and then reports it to your employer real time, so that if you go over the pre-described metrics, which is you're allowed to drive for 10 hours, but somewhere in there you have to take an hour-long break. And then you're allowed to have 3 hours on either side, 3 hours combined on either side of non-driving but working time. The truck's being loaded or something like that. And then you have to take a 10-hour break. There's your 24 hours. And so these devices ensure that happens. They're not going to cut off your truck or anything like that once you hit your 10-hour mark. That seems especially dangerous. But you would get fined for it. And what's made it super interesting is that the US government has passed a law now requiring these devices in trucks. And part of it is they've done the research and they found that drivers who drive for, I think they said it was they were looking at the number of accidents that drivers experience based on, due to fatigue. And it's under 10, it's pretty consistent actually. And then you start to see a jump starting at around hour 11. And then you see another big jump at 12. And then it just skyrockets after that to where you're pretty much going to get into a crash. And so, they picked a time frame that was safe for 80% of the drivers, probably 95% of the drivers out there. And, but it's been interesting because there's been a lot of backlash of these drivers saying, whoa, you don't trust me to log my own miles. You got to automate that part of it. And they talk about how it's it doesn't take into account certain things well, what if there's, it doesn't take into account certain things well, what if you just feel good and you could keep going? Or there was one scenario where the guy was what do you do if you hit traffic? And so you're a little bit behind schedule and you're 20 minutes away from home when your 10 hours of driving is up. Under the old school ways, you would just drive home and then, log it in such a way that it worked out.
Right.
And, or he's or maybe I'll take a 20-minute break and then just finish up the ride home. It's cause that's all, I just need to close my eyes for a little bit and then go or something, I don't need a full 10-hour break. Cause the way the current system works is if you're 20 minutes away from home, you pull off and you wait 10 hours before you can finish going home. Otherwise, quote, you will get in trouble. And I don't totally know what the penalties are, but I've got to imagine they're not great for breaking some sort of driving law.
They're penalties. Anytime you got penalties there.
Yeah. But it's interesting how it's this is a big step in automation in terms of tracking what employees are doing and holding them accountable. And the direct drivers themselves are just whoa, I don't think so. You got to trust me some.
Well, I'd hate it. It reminds me of when you realize your employer's tracking what websites you go to while you're at work.
Keystrokes?
Checking your personal emails. What the heck? Going to Reddit, really.
So it's interesting. This coincides with a talk that it was this video, this guy who wrote a book and I watched it because that's who I am. And one of the concepts he was talking about was the golden triangle of freedom.
Okay.
And I think it plays a role in here. And he talks about how this is what the founding fathers, almost all of them wrote about these concepts. And some of them referred to it by name, but a lot of them referred to it just in the general concept sense. So imagine a triangle, if you will. And there's 3 sides. There's freedom, virtue, and faith. And so freedom requires virtue. Virtue requires faith, and then faith requires freedom. It's kind of like the recycle, reduce, reuse, triangle with the arrows in it, if you will. But I want to focus on the first part, and it's freedom requires virtue. And one of the things that when Benjamin Franklin was leaving from Philadelphia after writing the Constitution, someone came up to him and was what do we get? Is it a democracy? Is it a king? Is it, they didn't know because democracy had never been tried before the U.S. came along. And so he said, it's, we chose democracy and it's yours if you can keep it.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of this one-off line that someone else actually overheard and wrote it down. So this is why we have it. And what he was referring to is virtue. And it's this idea of freedom works if the people are virtuous, if they're honest, if they're fair, if they give the benefit of the doubt, if they show the qualities of virtue. And if you do that, freedom works because, you think about like an employee, you don't need to track your employees if you genuinely believe that they're doing a good job and they're working hard for you. It's when you suspect that they're not, and usually it's because there are a few who aren't, who are ruining it for the rest of us. That's when you start to clamp down on those freedoms. And you just think about like the airport, right? There's a great example of a place where we don't trust each other.
Right. Well, and the exact opposite, Netflix, they don't have time off. You just take as much time off as you want because
right, there you go.
They know that everybody's keeping themselves. So if you can be an aggressive go-getter at Netflix and take vacation time, go for it. We trust you.
Right. Know? Yeah, exactly. And so this is one of those situations where from an employer standpoint, there isn't trust of the truck drivers. And again, it's probably one of those things where it's like, 80% of them are probably awesome. Model drivers, following the rules, to the best of their abilities, making smart decisions, probably on occasion breaking them, but in a way where you go, that was probably the right call. Things like that. And so like for example, one of the guys, he goes, when my shift, like when my 10 hours of rest is up, he's like, I need to get back on the road because now it's a very clear tie of dollars on the road versus what the money I'm making.
Right.
And so he's like, if I'm not driving, I'm not earning. Period.
Yeah.
And it's this weird because they get paid by the mile and that they're only allowed to drive a certain number of minutes. So he's like, so traffic's a horrible thing. It's a huge stressor. Whereas it used to be, traffic, I'm going to drive a little bit more so I can get my miles in, which again, like against the rules.
Yeah.
And now they're being tracked and, they don't like it. So we've entered into this weird situation now, at least in the US, where truck drivers are highly unsatisfied with this quasi-automation thing that's happening. And so it kind of starts to beg the question, wow, is the solution to say, let's get rid of the automation, which by the way is what the truckers want, or is it to say, let's keep pushing forward on this and let's keep automating this process? Because could you get it to a point where they actually could drive 24/7 if they wanted? Because, well, they're not driving.
Right. Well, and I guess it's so to bring back one of the things that Tesla revealed, part of their trucks things is that they can go into convoy mode, right?
Oh, that's right.
And you can have, I think it's like 3 trucks driving without drivers in the seats, as long as you have one person at the helm. So effectively, each one becomes like a really long trailer.
That's crazy awesome.
Yeah, and yeah, and it allows you to. I don't know. I'm conflicted with that. There's a part of me that doesn't like it. There's a part of like the freedom guy in me is like, don't do that, but I think, this idea that like, how could you go back though? This idea that you did pass a law, period. You don't like it. Laws should be followed. If you're going to
as we know, some laws can be repealed based on an administration. If we're not going to go down the net neutrality route, but it could be repealed despite what everybody wants.
Right. Yeah. Well, but my point is that, if you're going to have laws, you should enforce them, in my opinion, which is the sort of thing that
fair enough.
Shouldn't be controversial at all, but we're probably going to get angry comments about.
If you have laws, you should probably enforce them or follow them. And
it's
fair.
And maybe you could sit there and say, well, the laws are poorly written, which is fine. But then the idea that especially for the companies, I don't know. What I don't like about it is that I don't like where it comes from. It comes from this place of the laws are written, the insurance companies have agreed to it, and the companies want to have these things installed because it gives them clearance. They can be like, hey, you broke the rules. You were 20 minutes from home and you kept driving for those extra 20 minutes. So when you got in a car accident 5 minutes from home, well, that's not our fault. You were over your 10 hours. But at the same time, I don't think that the very fact that would be such a big motivator leads me to this place of.
Of course, you're also presuming like the laws are good, and
no, I'm not. I'm saying that if the laws exist, They should be followed, and they will be followed. It's like that's the
Yeah, I know, but I guess what they're pushing against is they're saying this is a bad law. For now, we'll follow it, but
which
I'm going to
is
fight
which is
against it.
fine. But I think the reality of it is what? How would you write that law in such a way that you're going to have a top
Dude, I
down
don't
law like
know. I
that,
don't know.
and you're going to have the roads are weird.
Well, you know what you do is you give some sort of tax incentive or whatever if it's installed, which is
Yeah,
one of those like, well, you have the choice.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know,
Yeah,
freedom ain't cheap, dog.
yeah, you can't be a competitive company if you don't have it, so you effectively can't exist. But
Well, you know,
I come to, especially with roads. Roads are weird because you don't have a right to drive. You have a right to own a truck. You don't have a right to use the public roadways. And there is a level of it's one of the most dangerous things that we all do on a regular basis. So
that's true. And semis are particularly dangerous for everybody else,
yeah,
which is
exactly.
part of the other piece.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The death rates in semis are low because they've got so much momentum, but they just cream everybody else. I don't know. It's
I
really
saw what could go wrong on Reddit, where it was
oh jeez.
some van who decided to cross into the lane of a semi, but when only half the car was actually ahead of it. Oh, it just started rolling the van.
Oh yeah.
Looked bad. Looked bad.
And one of the things is that I don't know. I think it's really easy for us as like, it's a tech podcast for us to be like, we'll just make automated trucks. Which I think is
That's true.
I think it's
that's how I feel.
yeah.
I'll be honest.
and I think it's really easy for us to do that. But it's also hard it's hard for me to conceive of how, if that wasn't an option, or it's hard for me to conceive of a world where that was an option and that's not inevitably where we'd end up. And quickly. Like the only thing that slows us down is that it's not a fully tested system, quote unquote.
Right.
Google would probably argue that we're good enough, but it's
we're good enough.
And if you combine the electric drivetrain and the sort of high level of control that you get over the truck with the electric drivetrain, coupled with some really intelligent design work,
and more importantly, like safety features too, really intelligent safety features.
Yeah, it just and I think that the Tesla trucks are a step in that direction. And I read a couple of reports talking about where truckers weren't super excited about the Teslas. They're not like, oh, these are great innovations that they came up with, but they're clearly designed around the idea of, of safety and giving control and moving down this road towards automation. One of the big complaints is the fact that it doesn't have mirrors. It's got cameras. Like, we use mirrors for all sorts of stuff. And you're like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but you need to understand the cars of the future have tons of cameras. It's just sort of like, you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to hit the curb. You won't hit the curb. The truck literally won't be able to drive into the curb because it will know the curb is there. And so even if you can't see it, you'll just get a little, like, as you approach it, you'll get a little notification, something to pop up. Like, that's what they want to
or just the wheel won't turn.
Right, yeah, exactly. And that's the direction that we're going to go while a person has to sit in the truck. But the truck companies, the trucking, Walmart doesn't want to hire all these truckers. Walmart wants to hire one person who gets into a four-door sedan and has 3 trucks trailing behind it. And when they get to their 10-hour shift is over, they pull over to the side of the street, and another driver, they can pull over. The trucks will park themselves before the next guy comes and picks up the rest of the load. And that's, I don't know. I just shrug my shoulders and I'm like,
or they'll have some sort of mid-highway choreography where they'll be driving and then the other car will come in behind it and they'll both like have to press a button. They're like beep, 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 transferring, and then the other car can get off the road and keep going, and the trucks never stop.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
And then
the future.
It's so few steps to the trucks just drive themselves, especially on open highways. Like, I don't know. On open highways,
you just got like people to take it to the freeway and people to take it off the freeway. Just waiting.
Exactly.
And there's like a little holding spot near the exit that the trucks are just waiting before. Yeah. Oh man, totally.
And most transportation in America is trucks. So I don't know.
So you think it's going there? All right.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, inevitably.
I agree. Well,
Most
listener,
shocking podcast ever.
I know. Well, we were trying really hard to not just gush about how awesome Tesla was for half an hour, and I don't know how we did.
I know. Well, and I guess my conclusion would be I feel bad for truckers, but I don't understand how there's any other way around it.
Yeah, you feel bad for truckers in the same way that you feel bad for McDonald's employees and farmers and eventually myself and
exactly.
Others where you're just like, but this one's very clearly like the next one to get knocked down.
Yep.
And companies are racing there. I totally agree. And Tesla's not the only one. There are a ton of other companies that are going after it as well. There was some Chinese backed company, or a Chinese company backed by NVIDIA. They just got a bunch of funding to try to create a level 4 autonomous semi. So, they're all going for it. So listeners, we got a question for you this week. Feel free to leave a comment on the Facebook, our blog, the Twitters, LinkedIn, whatever, YouTube too, I guess. Yeah. And the question is simply, what do you think of Tesla's trucks? Are they awesome? Obviously, we're not going to ask if you would buy one because the answer is no. But would you feel comfortable having one of them on the road with you? And so we want to know what your thoughts are about it. Or if you're like, whatever, it's a different industry. I'm waiting for my BFRs to take my product everywhere. That's what I want. That's what Tesla wants too. But anyways, all right, everybody. On that, we want to say thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. You can check out all the links to the show on furlobros.com/315-315. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes and Google Play. And we want to say thanks to a couple of people. Zach Estrada from The Verge for doing a good roundup. And then also there's a nice video on Vox that was talking about the ELDs. And then another good article that I didn't write the guy's name down on. Awesome. That's talking about the Golden Triangle of Freedom. So thanks for all of them for putting it out there. And on that note, I am James Furlo, and my Hallmark movie-loving brother is...
Don't mark me with that.
Sorry, you're right. He just loves them beyond belief. Is Matthew Furlo. And so we will talk next time.